Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show. Glad to have you guys here. Now, you know what? Uh, Iran and China, they're selling oil back and forth. One of their big tankers, they've been caught red-handed, trying to avoid sanctions or whatever. They're pulling their tankers up on the open ocean. Nobody's looking. Nobody's around or anything. They pull their tankers up together and they pump one tanker into another tanker, of Iranian oil or whatever, trying to avoid, you know, uh, I think that very possibly, I don't know this for certainty, but very possibly they're dealing with Bitcoin as transactions between these buying and selling oil and stuff. And so this is what's going on out there. But at the same time, I also heard one big shipment was coming across the Atlantic, and they got in rough seas or whatever, and a whole bunch of those cargo containers fell off into the ocean, and they lost them. They sunk to the bottom. Uh, Hundreds of big containers. The world's in a state of upheaval right now. I've been talking about this economic recovery coming this summer. It's in jeopardy, guys. It's in jeopardy because they are starting to be stingy within the government. This $1.9 trillion plan that they were planning on doing, Biden was planning on pushing through, is the right thing to do. But it looks like they're going to get stingy and they're going to trim it back to where it's probably only going to be 900 billion, less than half. What they don't realize is we've got about 30 million people out there on the edge right now, ready to fall off. They haven't fell off yet. They've been finding one way or another in order to survive. They get their stimmy check or whatever, and they make it go as far as they can. But we don't have in place the systems we have these old systems that have been put in place, like unemployment insurance or whatever. It wasn't meant for a situation like this virus from hell that on the surface looks like it's just a flu. Most people think, oh, it's just a flu. It's not just a flu, and I'll explain to you why. They have put in these social distancing measures and everything. It's destroyed the flu season this year. Flu can't transmit. There's almost no flu, almost no colds out there this year. So if you see a person coughing and sick, it's probably COVID. COVID, it doesn't stop COVID. These same measures that stop the flu and stop the cold doesn't stop COVID. It goes right through that and keeps spreading like wildfire. Uh, the thing about it is so that effect, it's COVID is completely different than the flu and the cold. It's so much more transmissible, so much easier to catch. And I have the sneaking suspicion that it's airborne, especially these new variants of COVID. You know, uh, what that basically means is it can travel on the air. You don't even have to touch a person or whatever. You can just a guy can be on the other side of the street coughing and sneezing, and you get too close to him and you can catch it with these new variants because they're supposed to be 70% more transmissible. Honest to gosh, guys. And another thing about COVID is uh, you can't compare it to the flu. It does have a high mortality, much higher mortality rate than the flu. It's like maybe 16 times more. And now with these new variants, they're claiming, like Boris Johnson said, that these new variants are very possibly even worse. So that'd be more than 16 times more deadly. And what about catching it again? So we got a civilization destroyer basically out there. This COVID, but we do have the uh, the vaccinations rolling out, and that's a big hopeful. But on the other hand, in order to have this economic recovery I was talking about, we have to have these politicians get off of their hands. They're sitting there and they're looking at the situation. Right now, everything looks fairly normal, like in Washington. Their lives are fairly normal. Except for the masks, their lives are fairly normal and everything in their communities and stuff seem fairly normal. So they go in and they say, well, do we really need all this stimulus? But we got all these people out there that they're not seeing that are starting to fall through the cracks. Rental moratoriums are going to start running out. These people are going to start to get evicted. Uh, we've got all these jobless people who have been on unemployment insurance, and that's normally only good for 26 weeks. But they've added more. They've added like 11 weeks to it. They're going to start falling off the unemployment in mass, droves of them, you know? And yes, we do need the big $1.9 trillion stimulus. And we need another one after that. We need them to get off their butts and put in these programs out there to catch these people as a safety net. The safety net's not there. Food banks isn't going to cut it. We've got a situation in the world where this recovery that I was talking about could turn into this quite exactly the opposite. It could turn into civil unrest breaking out and America looking more like Venezuela or Zimbabwe or some, and that could spread to other countries. If civil unrest breaks out massively in America, that could spread to other countries very quickly. Sort of a chain reaction sort of a thing. So, we are far from being out of the woods on this. And then what would the politicians do? If the whole thing starts to crumble to pieces and things become not normal anymore because they didn't pass the $1.9 trillion stimulus plan, they got tight and they trimmed it down to $900 billion, which is what they did just a little while ago with those $600 checks. They say they do that again. That ain't going to cut it. When these guys been out of work and now they're off of unemployment insurance and they're being evicted from their house and they owe $6,000-7,000 in back rent and they're suddenly find themselves on the street, a $600 stimulus check, that ain't gonna cut it. Not in today's world. So what would the politicians do if it all starts to fall to pieces? Well, then it's like no crying over spilt milk. The bottle of spilt milk's been dropped, the glass is all smashed, and the spilt milk has run down all through the cracks at that point. How do you put it back together at that point? Then they'll sign some massive stimulus bill and try to, but might be too late when your streets are all on fire. I mean, do they realize that all these 30, 40 million, 50, and what about the people associated with them? Are they counting the kids and everything else? It might be 50, 60, 70 million people in America who are going to find themselves suddenly without any hope. When people lose all, then they lose it. It's as simple as that. Especially if they've lived their whole life where they've had it all. And suddenly it's taken away from them, they're going to look for somebody to blame. Well, who are they going to blame? They're going to blame the political structure out there. Do these politicians realize that? That they are the ones that could actually, all of them, get thrown under the bus pretty soon? Maybe they would think twice about saying, okay, we're not going to pass this bill or whatever. We're going to trim it down and make it small. But they're sitting up there in Washington right now, and everything seems perfectly normal, and they talk to one another, and they say, oh, well, we can trim this back. Let's trim this back. Let's trim the fat off of this. Let's give the people skim milk. Don't let them have any butter, any fat. I'll tell you, the situation out there in the world right now, uh, let's get the charts started. Where are my charts? Okay, let's get the chart started right here, and let's take a look at what's going on. We're going to start with the gold price today, 1851. It's down $4.80. You'd think the first place that people would want to run would be to gold and silver. Silver's at 25.49. It's up 14 cents on the day, but it's falling right now. You'd think the first place people would want to run for safety is gold and silver in this kind of an environment right now. I just don't know. if push comes to shove for these politicians, I'm going to tell you, if things start to break apart and things start to really get nasty, millions of people get put out on the street, that they don't know what to do with these people. What's it going to be? They're going to have giant camps or something? I just don't know. Uh, I'll tell you, with this kind of a situation, then the politicians, if it all starts to break open and really get nasty, then the politicians, you'll see what cowards they really are. And they'll sign off on any bill. They'll make a $10 trillion stimulus bill then at that point. Anything, if they suddenly see that they're going to get thrown under the bus, then they'll squeal like a bunch of little piggies and they'll do whatever they have to do. They'll sign it off. And no matter how much. And you know, Jerome Powell's told them, we got a printer here, guys. Aren't you guys going to use it? And they're like, no, the people will be all right. Let them eat cake. You know, I mean, that's the attitude out there right now. But if things turn ugly, then their attitude will change mighty quick. You can see how quick their attitude of tightness can change to loose monetary policy if that happens. But will it be too late at that point right then, you know? Because once a revolution can get started, and where can it start? Any source can spark it off. And it can be anything. It can be called anything. Who knows where the ignition point can start it? You know, if you've got like a barn full of hay, who knows exactly what spark? It just can be something as simple as what they call St. Elmo's fire, which is static electricity. Look at the Hindenburg. It blew up and burnt because all that gas was inside that big dirigible, you know. And it found some ignition point, and when it goes up really fast. Boom, boom, boom. And, you know, if you guys watched the film footage of the Hindenburg disaster, you know, I know it was a long time ago. A lot of you don't even know what I'm talking about, you know, with the Hindenburg. But the Hindenburg was a big Zeppelin, a big, enormous flying balloon, basically, that was filled with hydrogen gas. Well, they say it could have been just static electricity set the thing off, but it was a tremendous tragedy with a loss of human life. It went up in a ball of flames in a matter of seconds. And that's the way with America right now. Everything seems seemingly fine, but we've got the fuel there. In other words, the hydrogen's there, you know. And all it's searching for is a spark. And just like in France, you know, they named them yellow vests because of the vests that they used to have to wear in their cars or whatever, you know. It could name it anything. It could be named anything, but it could come out of nowhere because the situation is right. It's ripe, you know. And instead of an economic recovery this summer, we could have a summer of chaos if they don't get off their butts and do more stimulus. Anyway, let's get a look at the silver price today. We've looked at the silver price. Let's take a look at the $917, $917 billion for cryptocurrency industry right now. Bitcoin price 31,794. We've seen a fall off in the price of Bitcoin, the cryptos, today in the last 24 hours, you know. Uh, but it's still doing good, you know. It's done this a few times before. Went down to about 900 billion, and then it goes back up to about a trillion or just slightly over a trillion again in the market industry. So it might be just doing that again, you know. So Bitcoin price goes down to like 30,000 or 31,000, and then it pops back up to 35, 36,000. It's been doing that for a little while now. Gonna have to wait and see what it does further. Dow Jones today, 30,996. Now this reinflation trade of the Dow Jones is dependent upon the stimulus. So yeah, we could have a fall in the Dow Jones. You know, a lot of people out there are shorting this market, and so far that they've taken a beating, the ones shorting the market. But my suggestion would be is not to short this market. You could take an awful beating, but that's just what I think, you know. But we're looking at 30,996. The market's completely oversold. It's running now completely on government stimulus. I'm gonna have to wait and see what happens here, but the market could take a tumble if situation goes in that direction. See, right now we're at an inflection point. That's a point where everything could go this way to the right, and everything could go this way to the left. On the left, you got chaos and craziness and uh, uh, a depression that could unfold like we've never seen before. And on the right, you've got this recovery that could happen, but it all depends on how government handles this situation. I don't give them an A plus for handling the situation at this point. I give them a D minus, and it's turning toward an F the way they're handling it. Tell you honestly. Now we're going to take a look at crude oil today, and it's 52.71. Move index today 43.08, going along sideways. Bonds and rates. What we're looking at is the Treasury yields. They got complete control over this. If this yield curve on the long end rises too high, well, they'll bring it back down again. If they have to, they'll do yield curve control. This they cannot let move. But the U.S. 10 years at 1.04 today, and the U.S. 30 years at 1.8. Now we're going to take a look at the U.S. dollar index, and we're looking at a fallen dollar today, 90.13, and it's leaning downwards today. As far as the stimulus is concerned, it says the final size of the realistic Biden stimulus will be trimmed back to just 1.1 trillion from 1.9 trillion. JP Morgan has even gone further, and they are in the following summary of what happens next from JP Morgan. Now expects it to be just a mere $900 billion, a carbon copy of the bipartisan December stimulus, and will be quite delayed as well. That's what JP Morgan's expecting. Well, they're asking for it. So all I can say is they are asking for it. And do they realize? I mean, okay, they're looking at the situation from the way it is right now, and they're saying to themselves, everything seems to be quite normal. We can get away with trimming these stimulus packages back. Everything could turn crazy pretty darn quick because we're in a situation here. And they're responsible. Not only on one end are they responsible for shutting the economy down, they're responsible on the other end. Because they are the lawmakers, They're the guys out there that's got to govern this. And this is a runaway train coming down a mountain right now, and it's got no handbrake. And like I say, we're at an inflection point. We could go one way, we could go the other. Right here, right now. Thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the very next show. Bye-bye.